Her name is Talia Rowan, 44 years old, 22 years in the U.S. Army Cyber Command. She didn't carry a rifle. She carried responsibility, encrypted, classified, and heavy. While the world slept, she protected it from foreign malware, from digital invasions, from cyber warfare most Americans never even knew existed. No one clapped when she came home. No one threw her a parade. And that was fine, because Talia never fought for applause. She fought for safety, for silence, for a truth that didn't need to be loud to be real. But there's something no military training prepares you for: betrayal from your own blood. It was a Tuesday. Talia was folding laundry in silence, her usual routine after morning PT. A half cup of cold coffee sat untouched on the counter. That's when her phone buzzed. Caller ID, Mom. That name still had weight. She answered. Talia, the estate hearing is next week. Your father's will is being processed. We need you to come. Her voice, dry, formal, not a greeting, not warmth, just a summons. Still, Talia said yes, because that's what family does, right? She packed her uniform, pressed it clean, and flew home believing in the quiet corners of her heart that this would be a moment of reconnection. What she didn't know was that she wasn't flying into a courtroom. She was flying straight into war. She wore her full uniform that day: medals, pins, rank, not to intimidate, but to remind the courtroom of what she had given up and what she had never asked for in return. She stood with poise, shoulders back, spine straight, like she had 1,000 times before in military briefings. But nothing prepared her for the words that came out of the opposing lawyer's mouth. Your Honor, we believe Miss Talia Rowan manipulated her elderly parents using psychological pressure and the weight of her military rank. Silence. Sharp. Stabbing. Talia didn't blink, didn't speak, but inside something broke. Her own mother sat behind the plaintiff's table. Her brother nodded solemnly, hand clutching his wife's. They weren't just taking her father's estate. They were taking her name, her character, and turning her uniform into a weapon against her. And for the first time in her life, in front of people who had shared her childhood, her bloodline, Talia Rowan realized she was utterly alone. From the moment Talia stepped into the courtroom, she could feel it. Not the chill of air conditioning, the chill of judgment. Her mother never looked at her, not once, not even by accident. Dean sat beside Mara, hand in hers, like they were victims of something far worse than the truth. The lawyers spoke with polish and poison. Every word was rehearsed, every glance calculated. They weren't just challenging her claim to the estate. They were dismantling her reputation, her credibility, her identity, one accusation at a time. She's always been difficult. She disappeared for years. She used her position to intimidate. Even her father feared her near the end. Lies, layered, rehearsed, sharpened to bleed slowly. No one mentioned the mortgage she quietly paid off, the holidays she missed because she was deployed in undisclosed locations, the medals earned in silence, the trauma carried alone. No. In that courtroom, Talia wasn't a daughter. She wasn't a soldier. She was a threat. And they weren't trying to win a case. They were trying to erase her. They didn't bring evidence. They brought a story, one stitched together with carefully chosen words, hushed tones, and just enough venom to sound believable. She suffers from PTSD. She's emotionally unpredictable. There were times we were afraid to leave our parents alone with her. Military life changed her, hardened her. The lawyer gestured to her uniform like it was a crime scene. Photos were shown selected to match the script. Talia mid-sentence in a hard expression during a military briefing. Talia staring into a screen during a deployment overseas. Not pictures of the woman who once spent 18 hours coding to shut down a cyber attack, but images designed to frame her. She said nothing, not a word. She didn't argue, didn't flinch, but her eyes were cold steel. Because Talia knew something they didn't. When a soldier stays silent, it's not surrender, it's strategy. It came on a Wednesday. Talia was scrolling through her inbox, trying to distract herself from the courtroom chaos. Spam, newsletters, military updates, and then a subject line that stopped her cold. Confirmation of veteran relief disbursement, Rowan case ID 1430X. At first, she almost deleted it. It looked like a scam, another phishing attempt, but something felt off. She clicked it, and what she saw made her breath catch. Her full name, her military ID, her deployment history, her home address, and a transaction, $38,000 labeled as veteran relief funds, already processed, already deposited, into a bank account she'd never seen before. She hadn't applied for anything. She didn't need aid, and she certainly hadn't authorized a payout. That was the moment Talia felt the shift. Not panic, not confusion, but something deeper. The kind of stillness that comes when your instincts know this isn't random. This is personal. Talia didn't wait. She called in a favor from a friend still working in federal financial forensics. Within the hour, she had a ledger in front of her and a name that made her stomach twist. Reidenhart LLC, a shell company, registered just 18 months earlier, listed under her brother's name, Dean Rowan. It hit her like a slap, because that name had come up once before. Thanksgiving, 2 years ago. Dean wouldn't shut up about his real estate pivot. Smart tax strategy, he called it. I'm consolidating family assets for long-term stability. Talia had smiled politely at the time. She didn't care for side hustles or vague LLCs. But now Reidenhart LLC was the legal owner of her parents' house, the same house she had helped save during her father's final illness. The same mortgage she'd quietly paid off from her own combat pay, never asking for credit, never telling anyone. And now, her name wasn't on a single document, not even in the fine print. Dean had taken it all, not through theft, through paperwork, through structure, through deception in plain sight. And Talia realized she wasn't the prey anymore. She was the hunter, and the chase had just begun. The lights were on. Talia didn't knock. She walked through the front door of the house she helped save, like a soldier returning to a base that no longer knew her name. Dean was on the armchair, legs crossed, scrolling on his phone. Mara was curled up on the couch with a glass of wine, watching a true crime documentary. The irony wasn't lost on her. Talia didn't raise her voice. She didn't scream. She held out the printed deed. "What is this?" Dean glanced up, then smirked. "Legal housekeeping," he shrugged. "Tax efficiency. Consolidation. You don't live here anymore, Talia. You don't need to be on anything." She blinked. One slow, deliberate breath. "I helped pay off this house, Dean." He didn't flinch. "Exactly. Helped. Past tense." Talia turned toward the recliner where her mother sat with a crossword in her lap. Her voice was low, controlled. "Did you know about this?" Her mother hesitated, just long enough to answer everything without a word. Then, softly, Dean explained it. He said, "It's for family stability." Family. That word echoed in Talia's chest like a gunshot. And in that moment, she knew the truth. They didn't just take her name off the deed. They erased her. Talia didn't slam the door. She didn't shout. She didn't break down. She stood still for a moment, one last look around. The hallway mirror caught her reflection. Not a victim, not a soldier, something sharper. Her jaw was locked, her shoulders square, and her eyes calculating. She didn't leave in defeat. She left in strategy. Outside, the night air hit like truth, cold sobering. She sat in her car, opened her notepad, not to write down feelings, but facts. Names, dates, account numbers, transactions. Not for closure, not for comfort, for war. Talia didn't cry. She compiled. Because her tears weren't her weapon. Her weapon was data. Talia didn't go to the police. She went to people who knew how to find ghosts in spreadsheets. Two former intelligence officers, both off-grid. Both owed her nothing, and that's exactly why she trusted them. They met in a rented cabin 3 hours outside D.C. No cell service, no Wi-Fi, just hard drives, printed records, and 3 minds trained to detect digital deception. They didn't need explanations. They saw the look in her eyes, the stillness, the precision, the readiness. Talia laid it all out. The shell company, the deed, the stolen veteran funds, the suspicious $38,000 relief payout, and the gut instinct that said this was bigger than family drama. They began to trace money laundering, ghost accounts, anonymous wire transfers, veteran IDs tied to fake applications, charities with fake boards and real bank accounts. The deeper they went, the clearer it became. Dean and Mara weren't just liars, they were operators. And what they were running wasn't just fraud, it was an entire machine. The first name hit like a gut punch. Oliver P. Grant. Talia froze, not because it was unfamiliar, but because she knew him. They served together. He was a combat medic in Helmand 2012, saved 3 lives under fire, died from blood loss during a failed convoy extraction. She remembered the weight of his dog tags in her hand. She remembered folding the flag for his widow. And now, there he was, listed as a recent applicant for PTSD therapy funds. Approved, signed, processed through a program run by Mara Rowan. Talia stared at the screen, heart steady, eyes sharp. "He's dead," she whispered. "He's been dead for over a decade." Her team double-checked. There was no mistake. Oliver's identity had been used to file for benefits under a fake phone number, a temporary email, and a newly opened bank account. And he wasn't the only one. They found more. Dead soldiers. Missing soldiers. Living veterans who had no idea their identities had been hijacked. The web was vast. And the nerve center, Mara. Her fake nonprofit Center for Restorative Futures was the hub. A cover for large-scale financial fraud targeting the very people Talia had spent her life protecting. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was a federal crime. This was a national security threat. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, spectators, people hungry for scandal and spectacle. But Talia didn't see them. She only saw the bench, the judge, the seat where truth would either rise or be buried under lies. She wore her full uniform, not for drama, but for truth. Rows of ribbons, the eagle pin, the service medals, every thread of fabric earned through sacrifice, every color sewn in silence, soaked in discipline. Dean didn't look at her. He sat stiffly, flanked by Mara and their lawyer. Mara wore pale gray and a rehearsed expression of concern. Dean's jaw was locked, performing stoicism. Then the lies began, again. She's paranoid, delusional. She's fabricated this entire conspiracy out of guilt and jealousy. The lawyer pointed to her military record. Deployments, secrecy, PTSD, isolation. This is not the mind of someone stable. And her mother? She sat behind them, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the floor. No support, no glance. Not even a flicker of defense. Talia stood alone. But she didn't flinch, because today she didn't come to argue. She came to end this. When it was her turn to speak, Talia didn't walk quickly. She walked deliberately. Each step measured, grounded, steady. Her boots echoed across the courtroom floor like a warning. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't bring a stack of documents. No theatrics. No emotion. Just one sheet of paper. She handed it to the judge. "Your Honor," she said calmly, "this is my only submission." The judge raised an eyebrow. He adjusted his glasses. Read the first line. Paused. Then the second. His eyes narrowed. His lips parted slightly. By the fourth line, he looked up sharply and said, "Close the doors. No one leaves." Gasps. Whispers. Dean sat up straight. Mara froze mid-breath. The bailiff locked the courtroom doors with a loud click, and then they came. Federal agents, fast, focused, no hesitation. Straight toward Dean and Mara. Handcuffs glinted under fluorescent lights. "You can't do this," Mara shrieked. "We didn't. This isn't." But the agents didn't answer. Talia stood still, unmoved, unblinking, because she knew this wasn't revenge. This was justice with a badge and a file folder. As the agents led Dean away in handcuffs, he turned just once, his face pale, his lips trembled, and with barely a whisper he said, "They made me do it." Talia didn't blink, didn't soften. She didn't ask who they were. She didn't care anymore. Behind him, Mara sobbed as cameras flashed. The noise of the courtroom felt far away, like static on an old radio. And then, her parents stood up, but they didn't come to her. They walked past, didn't look her in the eye, didn't speak, not even a nod. No apology, no regret, no explanation. Talia stood alone again, but this time she felt nothing. Not anger, not longing, just release. They didn't take anything from her, because what they tried to erase, she rebuilt with truth, and she didn't need their guilt to know who she was. Talia didn't hold a press conference. She didn't post anything online. She just disappeared. No headlines, no victory speech, just a train ticket, a sunrise, and a quiet goodbye to a life she no longer belonged to. Weeks later, in a small city tucked between mountains, Talia founded Honor Trace, a nonprofit dedicated to protecting the identities of fallen veterans. She worked in silence, as always. She built firewalls, hunted leaks, flagged financial fraud. She gave voice to the ones long forgotten, the invisible heroes buried twice, once in the ground, once by bureaucracy. One rainy morning, a letter came. Handwritten, faded ink, shaky script. "My husband died in 2013. Someone used his name to take a housing grant. We reported it, but no one cared. We thought we didn't matter anymore. Then you showed up. You found it. You made it stop. Thank you for seeing us." Talia read it twice, folded it gently, and for the first time in years, she cried. Not from pain, but from knowing this time she saved someone and the world noticed. Sometimes the people we call family are the very battlefield we must survive. Not everyone who shares your blood will stand beside you when it counts. And silence, it's not weakness. Sometimes it's preparation for the strike that changes everything. Talia didn't scream. She didn't beg. She stood her ground, watched from the shadows, and fought back with the truth. When you're betrayed, you have two choices. You can let the pain consume you, or you can use it to rise, to act with strength, and never drop to the level of those who tried to break you. Justice doesn't always come with shouting or grand speeches. Sometimes it arrives in a single sheet of paper, a quiet stare, a steady step forward. Because the loudest revenge is living with dignity and walking away without fear. If this story made you feel something, anger, strength, maybe even hope, don't let it end here. Hit subscribe to join a community that believes in truth, justice, and the power of silent resilience. Because sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest truths.